Hello, everybody. This is Gerald Varela with Back Corner Comics again, and I'm very excited about the comic that we're talking about today, and it's Cabbie by Martí. This is kind of like a riff on the Chester Gould, Dick Tracy art style, but mixed in with the underground kind of comics movement that happened in Spain. There's a really good essay that really kicks off this collection. Totally recommend reading it. It really sets the stage for what you're about to read. And this was a blast for me. I knew about Cabbie for about a few years. I saw it in my local comic book store. Shouts out to A&M Comics. And, I was going to pick it up, but then I saw there was a solicitation for this release. And I said, okay, I'm going to hold off because it says the definitive edition. So when I picked it up, I read through the essay and I found out that Martí actually passed away and that this is an unfinished kind of epic. And it kind of like, when you hear that or read that stuff, it sucks because this is a singular vision and we're not going to ever see it finished. But I will say what is released here in this collection is very good. The second story ends on a cliffhanger that doesn't necessarily get resolved. There is a kind of like preview pages from what would have been the third story, and that's very interesting. And we'll get into that when we start cracking open the collection. But I just to say right off the bat, to not waste anybody's time, pick this up, especially if you like Chester Gould's art style. And I feel like Dick Tracy is an absolute maniac. I mean, the guy is a borderline psychopath. But I don't think Chester Gould kind of wrote the character with that intention. But Martí plays with the history of Gould's art style and the history of Dick Tracy's storytelling. And I'm telling you right now, Martí was aware that Cabbie is a psychopath. And I think it's an amazing kind of exploration of that kind of character when you're aware of it, as opposed to Chester Gould not being aware that, Dick Tracy's a maniac. But whatever, let's crack it open and see. Yellow is a big theme here. He's a cabbie, so you're going to have a lot of these bright yellows. Here's the man himself. And these were originally published in a magazine called La Vibora. I'm Spanish, and I can't even say it again. Right here, La Vibora. And I've actually thought about picking them up, so maybe one day we'll be looking at those magazines. Here is the kind of essay. As you can tell here, amazing painted kind of cover. And then boom, we get into it proper. And so yeah, you can definitely see the Dick Tracy stuff here, the flat kind of panels that are kind of deep too. I don't know how to really explain it, but it has this id factor to the art style, and Martí captures it perfectly. And not only does he capture the art style, but he captures the storytelling of Chester Gould. And I like to think about, these stories as being Rube Goldberg machines of plots where one thing leads to another, and, it's a never-ending kind of, person, meets this person, and then this person tells another person that kind of, it's like a domino effect. And it's really great and fun to read. The plot never really drops in that regard. You get a lot of these world building things here, like, how he prevents people from pickpocketing him. And, there's elements here of authoritarianism and kind of how that affects a society and stuff like that. The second story is my favorite story. He kind of has a love interest, and there's like this whole thing with a water, solid water. There's this guy selling ice, and the business is called the Solid Water Company. There's some blackmail going on. So these are pulp stories set in the kind of notion of underground comics with a look of Chester Gould's art style for Dick Tracy. Very good stuff. This guy gets burnt to a crisp, and he really brutally shows it as such. So here is the third story that was incomplete, Cabbie 3 official preview. And his art style shifts. It changes from being an exact copy of Chester Gould to being something a little bit more different, a little bit more unique with bolder lines. But I don't mind, him spoofing on Chester Gould's art style. It's a shame that we didn't get this third story finalized, it hurts really. You got some cool stuff, promotional pages, very influenced by the pulps. Golden Age, for whatever reason, Golden Age comics love these staircases. It's like in the spirit, like all the time. Taxista, I think that's the original title, the Spanish title, which Cabbie is like a direct translation. Good stuff here. What's a good pulp story without a sewer segment? And look at that face. That's a face of a maniac. This comic is so trippy, guys. Look at that. What is that? What is that? Great stuff. You get the Spanish kind of stuff going on here. Those guards are involved. I will say there's kind of a bit of a tragic figure in a character called Sissy. She's 13, and she's really taken advantage of. As you can see here, blood, sweat, and semen. That it was an aspect that I wasn't necessarily crazy about, but I know what he's trying to say here. It's not like a perverted thing going on, and she really is like a tragic hero. Another thing I want to bring up that I almost completely forgot about is Catholic guilt. If you grew up in a Spanish household, you know what Catholic guilt is. You felt it. If you drop that pan, that's God punishing you for being a bad person. I can't believe I've been told that in my life growing up. But that kind of happens here where he starts hearing a saint talking through this 13-year-old girl's ear. Very trippy stuff, but very Catholic. If you know anything about Catholic history, there's always these outrageous stories of, people seeing Mother Mary in a piece of toast or whatever. So yeah, just very good stuff. A lot of social commentary. I wouldn't miss out on this, and I paid my money for this, and I gotta say, like, it was well worth it. And everybody should really check it out, especially if you like underground comics, and especially if you like kind of off-kilter stories that are not of the norm. So yeah, this is Cabbie by Martí, published by Fantagraphics, beautifully designed. And I'm Gerald Varela with Back Corner Comics. Thank you for watching.